So again, this is Thailand, and your first step when you analyze these images is to read the titles. So it says Thailand, January 30th, 2003, pre-disaster. So we're comparing images before and after a disaster. And Thailand, we look at what we see in this picture to draw conclusions about Thailand. So I see a lot of water. It says this is the sea. So we have ocean. Okay, we have a beach. We have a lot of vegetation, a lot of grass, and it looks like we have some smaller bodies of water. I can't really tell if there's a lot of buildings, but it does look like there's civilization, and we have some resorts that are listed. So it's a highly tourist area, I could assume, because tourists go to resorts. So based off of this, what kind of disaster do you think that Thailand experienced on January 30th, 2003? So we said maybe a hurricane. So let's look at this post-disaster. Somebody said tsunami. I think both of those are really great. Tropical depression. So some kind of water storm. And so when we look at the post-disaster, I'm not sure if these are clouds or if these are smoke, but all the grass in the resort, all of that area, that coastal area has been wiped out. There's no grass. All I see is dirt or land until we get really far to the right of the photo. So some things that I notice is the ocean looks darker, which is weird. I noticed that you can't really tell where the beach is. You just see a lot of dried out land where vegetation or grass and trees and stuff used to be. But it doesn't cover the whole entire image. When you get far enough inland to the right of the picture, you still see some vegetation. So those are my observations on this picture. We have some really good analysis going up in the chat. It's dried up, some kind of storm or some kind of natural disaster like a fire. So what we did is we explained the features we see in the image, like lakes, rivers, mountains, beaches, buildings, and we compared how both of those images changed from the before to the after. What has stayed the same between the before and after, and what has changed. And then in the chat, we were actively predicting what may have led to the change in these images. So if we look back through this, knowing what I know about Thailand, I have to agree that it was some kind of tsunami or major hurricane. And that the more likely a tsunami came, a big wave, a series of waves came and wiped out the whole coastal area. And that's why all the vegetation has been wiped away. And we also noticed how the very far right side of the image still remains pretty green. It's possible a fire, but given the location of this city, of this place, I think a tsunami is the best bet. But this is how a tsunami changed it. 1 minute everything's green and they're prospering, and the next everything is completely wiped out and eroded away by the ocean. That could also explain why the ocean is darker, because the ocean waves hit this landform and pulled all of that vegetation and other contents into the ocean with it. One of your classmates did some research and they found out that an earthquake, not here, I believe, an earthquake someplace else caused the tsunami to hit Thailand in 2003, and this was a very devastating. I think something of 100,000 or more people were presumed dead. So this was a very catastrophic event for this area. And just like Ms. Hampton was saying, the salt water also kills the vegetation because plants need fresh water, not salt water. And that also would explain why the coastal area is so brown and bland looking. So this is our second satellite image. If you look really closely at the picture, it says A6 landslide. So I'm guessing where this red line is where the landslide occurred. My observations of this picture, I see a lot of vegetation, a lot of green, a lot of plants. In fact, that's all that I see. Other than that, I'm not 100% sure what I'm looking at, just because I just see a ton of vegetation. Some of the darker and lighter shades of vegetation might indicate that this is got different elevations, so this might be some kind of mountain. The darker would be a higher elevation or lower, I'm not sure, but it does look like there are some changes in elevation as far as this image is showing. In the B image, or the after image, along that red line, I see a lot of less vegetation. It looks like a lot of mud or rock because it's really brown, and it's very specific as far as where it's located. It looks like it almost looks like a brown river, and then it kind of pulled into a brown mud lake or something along those lines. So that might tell me that where the most of the brownness is a lower point of elevation where this pooled. And so a landslide is when land breaks away and slides down. So I'm guessing a piece of land broke away here, and we're seeing either the underside of it or what's left of it. What are your guys' thoughts? So when we evaluate these images based off of these questions, we explained what features we see as far as it being a mountain, and we see lots of trees and greenery. We noticed that not all of the greenery had went away between the before and after. That you still see a lot of trees and vegetation, but in a specific area, it looks like there has been it looks like a mud river or some kind of soil that's been left behind. And we see an area where it pooled, where there's a wider area. So if we go back to the image again, it looks like a bunch of rock or dirt or some kind of soil here where the vegetation has been removed or covered. It could be covered. And then we have some kind of rock or river looking stream. This little long line would look like maybe where a dried up river might be. So what's going to happen to this land feature in the future? Are they going to experience another landslide and more of this vegetation would be wiped out, or is the vegetation going to grow back? And those are things that they use satellite images to decide, and maybe they use them to help predict when they can anticipate another landslide and what causes landslides. I asked if you guys would describe this as some kind of weathering or erosion. I think the erosion is a good response because the landslide carried broken rock and other material down, and that destroyed other parts. It could be a combination of the two. Somebody said not weathering because that happens just with rocks, so that's a fair answer as well. So we'll stick with erosion as being the cause of this landslide. Okay, so we're going to go through one image, and this one's a little closer to home. This is Galveston. This is one of Galveston's beaches in 2008. So this is before Hurricane Ike, and the bottom image is after Hurricane Ike. So when we go through our questions, we look at what we notice. I see lots of water because we know Galveston. You have to take a bridge to get to it. So you have an island here. So there's water all the way around. I see a beach. I don't see a lot of buildings, but I do see buildings. Around the buildings, I see a lot of grass and vegetation and a drier area that might be a parking lot. On the after image, 5 days after Hurricane Ike, I still see the building, but I don't see as much of the beach. The water level is significantly higher, and I don't see half the vegetation I do in the first image. The bottom image, it looks like just a bunch of water and sand, and the water is much closer to those buildings than it was in the first image. There's also looked like a little pier or a bridge in the first image that's coming from those buildings through the grass toward the beach. And in the second image, that is gone. So knowing what we know about hurricanes, I'm guessing that that was destroyed due to wind and wave surges. But what happened to the vegetation? What can we explain? What can we use to explain the changes between September 10th, the before Hurricane Ike, and the after Hurricane Ike? We said that the water level looks significantly higher, and so it is washing away or eroding the vegetation, the grass in front of these two buildings. And that's why we still see some tints of green, and we see a lot more brown where the grass used to be. And one of our predictions is that the erosion is going to continue, and there won't be vegetation along this beachfront for a really long time, because the water is going to continuously erode that area away. So before we go, the final thing that you guys need to do, and this is what your activity is for today, is you go to my Jamboard. You click this link and you open the Jamboard, and you're going to use a sticky note, and in your own words, not Google's words, your own words, you're going to create your own definition of 3 events that cause changes to Earth's surface. So erosion, weathering, deposition, what are they, and how do they cause changes to Earth's surface? That's what you guys are putting on your sticky note. And here is a preview of the Jamboard. The instructions say, grab a sticky note and write your own definitions of 3 events that cause Earth's surface to change. Okay? And that is all that you do for today. Continue to observe these satellite images and think about what you see and how they're going to change.